May 1945. A road somewhere in Germany, running west. A column of German soldiers moves along it. Ragged, hollow-cheeked, uniforms worn to threads. They are not prisoners. No one is marching them. They are moving on their own will, in their own direction, as fast as their legs allow. The Eastern Front is collapsing behind them. Every instinct, every step is aimed at a single objective, reaching American lines before the Soviets do. They are not running from the Americans, they are running toward them. Why? These men have spent years fighting what their government told them was the most dangerous enemy in the world. By the cold arithmetic of casualties, German infantry inflicted 50% more deaths than they suffered. They were, man for man, more lethal. And yet here they are, choosing captivity under the army they'd been told to despise over one more day of fighting the army they'd been taught to fear. In 1939, Germany's military planners did not lose sleep over America. They barely thought about it at all. The number was 17. In September 1939, when German armor rolls into Poland and rewrites the rules of European warfare, in a single week, the United States Army is the 17th largest in the world. Behind Romania, behind Portugal, 190,000 men. A force you could lose in an afternoon on the Eastern Front, equipped with weapons designed for a war that ended 20 years ago, commanded by officers trained on peacetime drills they will never use in actual combat. Germany, by contrast, has spent a decade building something extraordinary. The Wehrmacht of 1940 is the most tactically sophisticated army on earth, a machine forged from ideology, professional pride, and genuine battlefield excellence. It dismantles France in 6 weeks. Yugoslavia falls in 11 days. By the summer of 1941, German tank columns are within sight of Moscow. These are not propaganda numbers. They are real. The men who accomplished them know they are good. They have earned that knowledge on a series of battlefields that the world watched with disbelief. 17. The prevailing view in Germany about American military power is not quite contempt. It is something more dismissive than that. America is, in the German phrase, a money-hunting nation too engrossed in the hunt of the dollar to produce a strong military force. A consumer culture, a nation of soft people, pampered, spiritually weak. Lacking the Volksgemeinschaft, the community of national will, that Germany believes is the true engine of its military strength. German soldiers who fill out morale questionnaires describe their army's virtues with absolute conviction. More than 90% express positive opinions of their own soldierly qualities. And they have reasons for that confidence. They have been right about everything so far. This view of America has history behind it. After the First World War, German intelligence officers spent years combing through interrogation records and captured letters, compiling a portrait of the American soldier they had faced in 1917 and 1918. The document they produced, titled Candid Comment on the American Soldier of 1917 to 1918, gathered assessments from soldiers, officers, priests, and civilians. The conclusions were layered. One former Prussian official described the American army as a fine collection of individual physical specimens, but, from the standpoint of military discipline, a mob, pure and simple. American troops, the report noted, lacked the snap and precision of German soldiers. But buried in the same document, almost as an afterthought, Americans are good fighters with nerve and recklessness. The German officers who filed that observation regarded recklessness as a military vice, a sign of poor discipline, of soldiers who hadn't been properly trained to calculate, to consolidate, to wait. They were describing something else. They just didn't know it yet. By February 1943, Germany is about to get its first real look at the American army in the field, and what it finds confirms every assumption. The Kasserine Pass is a 2-mile-wide gap in the grand dorsal chain of the Atlas Mountains in west-central Tunisia. In February, the air is cold and damp. The dirt tracks turn to mud by intermittent rain, the ridgelines brown-gray and bare. The smell in the passes is cordite and motor oil and wet wool. It is into this country that General Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel launches his attack on February 19th, leading the Afrika Korps Assault Group alongside 2 panzer divisions and the Italian Centauro Armored Division. Rommel has a gift for reading a battlefield. What he reads in the American position is weakness, fragmented command, inadequate coordination between armor and infantry, artillery that cannot speak to the men it's supposed to support, untested units deployed without coherent doctrine. The American, British, and French forces in the theater are uncoordinated among themselves. Elements within divisions have been split up and assigned individual tasks rather than integrated into combined arms teams. And at the center of this failure is the man commanding U.S. Second Corps, Major General Lloyd Fredendall. Fredendall has established his headquarters in an underground bunker carved out of rock, 70 miles behind the front. His engineers spent weeks blasting it from the hillside, while his men forward had no adequate support. He communicates to his subordinate commanders through radio orders so abbreviated and encoded in personal shorthand that officers at the front cannot decode them in time to act. He has never visited the front. His men barely know what he looks like. This is not leadership. This is what Germany expected. American units, outmaneuvered and uncoordinated, are driven back more than 50 miles. Around 300 men are killed, 3,000 wounded, nearly 4,000 captured. The United States Army loses 183 tanks, against 20 on the German side, 104 half-tracks, 208 guns, 512 trucks. The passes are littered with burning American equipment. Omar Bradley will later call it the worst performance of the U.S. Army in their whole proud history. Rommel surveys the wreckage and confirms his diagnosis. The Americans are the weak link. Target them first. Press the advantage before the British and French can coordinate a response. He is right about February 1943. That is the last time he's right about the Americans, because Kasserine Pass, seen from a certain angle, is the most useful thing that ever happens to the United States Army. Every structural failure, the fragmented command, the artillery gap, the communications chaos, the absence of leadership from the front, is exposed in a single catastrophic week, visible to every officer who needs to see it. You cannot fix what you cannot see. Germany wins the battle and draws exactly the wrong conclusion from it. The Germans look at the smoking wreckage and see confirmation. They should have looked longer. In March 1943, a new face appears in Tunisia. George S. Patton is 57 years old, 6 feet tall, silver-haired, jaw set like a cliff. He wears a lacquered helmet liner with 3 stars and carries ivory-handled revolvers on his hips. Never pearl-handled. He will correct anyone who says so with language not suited to broadcast. His voice is high-pitched, almost squeaky, which surprises everyone who meets him, given everything else about him. He imposes dress codes within days of arriving, helmets at all times, fines for improper uniform in forward areas. He drives through the front positions himself, visible, deliberate, intentionally seen. He is not Fredendall. Every man in Second Corps understands this within a week. But the transformation in Tunisia goes far deeper than one man's posture. After Kasserine, the U.S. Army doesn't give a speech about courage. It counts trucks. It widens roads. It moves supply dumps forward. It adds more than 4,000 additional vehicles to the logistical chain, rebuilds the rail network, expands port operations, and begins using aerial resupply with the kind of systematic aggression it had previously reserved for strategic bombing. The German Clausewitzian tradition, war as the exercise of will and maneuver, has no real category for this kind of response, because this kind of response is not about martial virtue. It is about engineering. The willingness to look at a broken system and fix it piece by piece, without drama, without ideology, with nothing more than the national habit of solving a problem and moving on. The artillery system is rebuilt from the ground up. The key innovation is not just better guns. It is a different philosophy of fire. The Fire Direction Center, a centralized radio network linking multiple artillery battalions, allowing a single observer, a lieutenant lying in a ditch with a radio, to call down the combined fire of an entire corps within 90 seconds. A German commander who triggers an American response does not face one battery. He faces everything in range, simultaneously. German defensive positions constructed over days are consumed in seconds by fire that seems to come from everywhere at once. No geography protects against it. No preparation anticipates it. Rommel is watching all of this. He is the first German officer of any consequence to update his assessment. He had dismissed American commanders as inexperienced. He is now impressed by how quickly they come to understand and implement mobile warfare. He writes operational reports to the German High Command, OKW, warning in plain language that American artillery superiority has already broken the front in North Africa, that the trajectory is clear, that the window is closing. The reports arrive at the right desks. Berlin does not answer. Hitler does not listen. The man who sees it most clearly is writing into silence. The American army that lands in Normandy in June 1944 is not the one that collapsed at Kasserine. It has been tempered in North Africa, blooded in Sicily, ground through the slow, brutal terrain of the Italian campaign. It arrives at the beaches of France carrying something it didn't carry in Tunisia, the institutional memory of having been broken and having fixed itself. German soldiers waiting in their concrete positions still carry the Kasserine assumption. Most of them are about to discover how badly that assumption has aged. German veterans who survived the war and are asked to compare fighting the British to fighting the Americans describe the British as competent, professional, methodical, patient, willing to attack only with overwhelming force prepared in advance. This is a grammar of war the Germans understand. It has rules, rhythms, moments of predictability that a trained mind can exploit. The Americans don't follow the same grammar. One German veteran calls them enthusiastic amateurs with a disposition to aggression I'd never seen in any other nation's sons. He means it as a mild insult. What he is actually describing is something that has no good translation in the German military tradition. When British forces are hit, they return fire, reposition, consolidate, wait for intelligence. When American forces are hit, they return fire, call for everything available, and move toward the source of contact. Immediately, aggressively, without waiting for the situation to clarify. German officers know how to fight professionals. They do not have a doctrine for an enemy that responds to ambush by charging. Where does this come from? Not from training manuals. German observers note, sometimes with bafflement, the relationship between American officers and their men. The attitude of the American officer towards enlisted men is very different than in our army. One German prisoner remarks in a conversation he believes is private, in which officers have always treated their men as cattle. Americans are described as wonderfully mild-mannered, which the observer means as a slight, not understanding that a private who is treated like a person fights with more initiative than one who is treated like a platform. When the lieutenant goes down, the sergeant keeps moving. When the sergeant goes down, the corporal keeps moving. The chain does not break, because it was never purely a chain. This runs deeper than officer culture. America is a country built by people who solved their own problems. Immigrants who constructed lives from nothing. Frontiersmen who couldn't wait for instruction. That cultural reflex does something specific in a firefight. It means that when the plan falls apart, the American soldier improvises. It means that when the map doesn't match the terrain, he adapts without paralysis. In the summer of 1944, in the Bocage country of Normandy, 6-foot earthen hedgerows, narrow sunken lanes, German 88mm guns registered on every sight line. American tank crews are being slaughtered every time a Sherman tries to push over an embankment and silhouettes against the sky. A sergeant from New Jersey named Curtis Cullen takes German beach obstacles, welds them to the front of a tank, and creates a device that pushes through the hedgerow instead of climbing it. Within weeks, the modification is adopted across the entire army. Soldier-level improvisation, institutionalized before the month is out. The weapons they bring into this fight generate their own category of dread. The M2 Browning heavy machine gun, Madus to the men who use it, fires a half-inch round at up to 600 rounds per minute from vehicle mounts, ground emplacements, and the wing stations of a P-47 Thunderbolt in banks of 8. In night actions, German soldiers describe the tracer pattern as a river of fire. In daylight, a column of vehicles within range of a Jabo, the German soldiers' name for the fighter bomber, has perhaps 30 seconds to disperse before the diving aircraft saturates it with 100 rounds per second. By 1944, moving supply convoys in daylight is very nearly suicide. German soldiers learn to wait for darkness, to sleep through the day, to exist in the shadow of American air. And then the artillery starts. The enemy's tremendous superiority in artillery, and even more in the air, has broken the front open. That is Rommel, not a demoralized conscript writing home. The Desert Fox, Germany's most aggressive armored commander, writing in an operational report to OKW. Also in evidence is their great superiority in artillery and outstandingly large supply of ammunition. Rommel had fought across 3 continents. He chose the word broke. By the standard metrics of infantry combat, German soldiers are more lethal than Americans. Man for man, they inflict 50% more casualties than they suffer. They are better trained for individual combat, sharper tactically, products of a military culture that treats the rifleman as a craftsman of war. In a fair fight, equivalent weapons, equivalent ground, the German wins more often than not. They are still losing, because America is not fighting a fair fight, not by choice, not by accident, but because the war that is actually happening is not the war Germany prepared for. The Germans built an army for the short, decisive campaign. The war that ends in 6 weeks on a map table with a surrender document. America built, without quite intending to, the machine for a different war entirely. A long war, an industrial war. A war decided not in a single elegant campaign, but in the accumulated weight of steel, fuel, food, and time. German officers have a word for this, Materialschlacht, the battle of material. They say it with contempt. Americans aren't fighting with skill and will. They're burying the problem in steel. It isn't martial virtue. It's just factories. They are correct. That is exactly what it is. And it is the right answer. Rommel keeps writing his reports, the artillery, the air, the logistics that never reach a breaking point. He warns OKW before D-Day. If the Allies get ashore and establish a foothold, the war in the West is finished. Not because German soldiers will fail, but because American firepower and supply will make it impossible to push them back to the sea. His reports arrive at the right desks. They are filed. Nothing happens. On October 14th, 1944, a car pulls up to Rommel's home in Herrlingen. 2 German generals step out. They offer him a choice, a people's court trial, meaning certain death and reprisals against his family. Or a pill. He goes upstairs. He says goodbye to his wife and son. He gets in the car. 20 minutes later, he is dead. Germany announces that Field Marshal Rommel has died of wounds suffered in an earlier air attack. He is given a state funeral. Hitler sends a wreath. The American factories are still running. December 16th, 1944. In the Ardennes forest in Belgium, before dawn, Germany launches its last major offensive in the west. The planners have chosen the ground with care. Dense forest, narrow roads, December overcast that will ground American aircraft for days. Every advantage the Americans have spent 2 years accumulating: air power, artillery coordination, the logistical machine that keeps divisions moving, is neutralized by terrain and weather. This is Germany's best hand. The German commanders know it. American lines, thinly held along an 80-mile front, fracture under the blow. But then the story goes wrong for Germany in a place called Bastogne. The 101st Airborne Division holds the crossroads town in central Belgium. They are surrounded on all sides. The temperature is 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Snow lies knee-deep in the surrounding fields. The men have no winter equipment, inadequate ammunition, no medical supplies, and no air cover. Against them, 4 German divisions pressing inward from multiple directions. On December 22nd, a German officer arrives under a white flag and presents a formal written demand for surrender. The language is precise, almost courteous, an acknowledgement of the Americans' position, an offer of an honorable way out. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, 47 years old, reads it. His written reply sent back to the German emissaries. Nuts. The German officers require a translator. They attack anyway. They are beaten back. On December 26th, Patton's Third Army breaks through to Bastogne. He has wheeled his entire army 90 degrees north through blizzard conditions in 48 hours. A redeployment German and Allied staffs had judged impossible in the time. When the lead tanks reach the perimeter, the battle's strategic outcome is sealed. Germany played its best hand in the conditions most favorable to its strengths against soldiers who were frozen, surrounded, and outnumbered. And America did not break. In the secretly recorded conversations of German prisoners of war, held in British and American captivity, men talking freely in rooms whose walls contain hidden microphones, the pattern is consistent in the second half of the war. 150,000 pages of unguarded voices. On the subject of fighting Americans, the firepower, the refusal to stop, the weight of it. One German veteran, asked about the Russians, will say only that he is glad he was able to surrender to the Americans instead. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't have to. By May 1945, 1.6 million American soldiers stand on German soil. The country ranked 17th in military size in September. 1939 has put 8 million men in uniform and produced 86,000 tanks, 286,000 aircraft, and enough artillery ammunition to have made the word Materialschlacht sound less like an insult and more like a prediction. The road runs west. German soldiers in the final weeks of the war aim themselves at American lines. Not to fight, to reach them. The army they had been told to despise has become the army they most want to find. Terrifying on the battlefield and by the standards of 1945, humane in victory. A captured private named Richard Mullen writes home that it's hard for him not to smile back at the German civilians he encounters. The men who built their entire identity around military supremacy are now calculating which enemy's hands they most want to fall into. The answer, consistently, is the same. Ernie Pyle covered the American soldier from the beginning to very nearly the end. He wrote about them as the mud, rain, frost, and wind boys, men with no comforts, who learned to live without even the necessities, who were the ones, as he put it, that wars can't be won without. He wrote what the unit histories and command dispatches could not contain, that the men who won this war were not figures from a propaganda poster. They were cold and complaining and irreverent and homesick, and they kept moving forward because the man beside them was moving forward. Pyle was killed by Japanese machine gun fire on Aishima in April 1945. He was 44. He did not see the war end. The Germans, who dismissed American soldiers as undisciplined amateurs, were not entirely wrong. Americans were informal, irreverent, and loudly unhappy about nearly everything. They complained about their food, their officers, and the war itself. They called their generals by nicknames, and when the shooting started, they moved toward it. They kept moving toward it. They kept coming, and they kept coming, and they did not stop. Backed by a country whose factories ran through every winter of the war and never once had to choose between feeding its soldiers and feeding its people. That is what the Wehrmacht never had a doctrine for. That is what the Germans who survived it knew. In the winter of 1945, when they aimed themselves westward and ran,